Warning. This show features dark subjects which may be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Chaos Jar. I'm J Wes Secord, the loud and obnoxious one. Hey. And over here we have our bag of facts, Mr. Bad Ben.
Hey, without the voice crack.
I just had a granola bar. And Leslie, our good friend as always, A.T. Token.
We're a lively bunch today.
Yep. It's very hot, and I just finished a granola bar, because that's what I said earlier, and now I'm sticking to it. And, as always, our house cleaning.
Alright, so rate, review. It really helps us go up the charts and get more listeners, so...
Up the charts.
Yeah, up the charts.
Next, we're going to get our platinum album soon.
Yeah, totally. We'll be nominated for a Grammy.
Don't get your hopes up too high.
Oh, come on. Spoken word albums.
Yeah. Spoken word poems.
You can also follow us on Instagram, at BA Jar on both. At BA Chaos Jar on both Instagram and Twitter. And then on Facebook and so on, it's Pandora's Jar Podcast. But still haven't fixed that. Just going to make a new page, probably.
Yeah, guys, we apologize that that's a thing. But you know what?
Lawyers.
That just shows how much chaos this jar creates. Like, yeah, chaos. Anyway.
Taco.
That hit me over here.
Yeah. Don't make it seem like it's that far of a distance.
There's a barrier. It's not about distance.
Oh,
permeates.
So what's going in the jar today?
All right, so we're going to talk about the White Witch of Rose Hall.
Oh man, I heard of that. That's the one, like,
whatever
the Jesus lion had to hire those kids to kill?
What?
I think that's Narnia. But no, not that White Witch. It's a very, very different story. You're going to be very disappointed.
Debatable. I assume there's going to be less Christian overtones in this story.
Is it an American?
Yeah. There's going to be very less Christian overtones in this story. There's definitely no Jesus lion.
Honestly, I kind of wish there was a Jesus lion in everything.
Oh man, that just make every story so much better. And
right?
then the Jesus lion showed up.
Like, nobody would have to worry about the race thing. Well, even though there's very historical ways to figure out what era they suspect Jesus was in to show what race he was. Now I'm getting political. But the point is...
You mean religious or political?
Shut up. Anyway, who cares about race when he's a fucking lion?
This is true. We could all accept that Jesus.
I think we can. Yeah.
Yet so many didn't.
Who didn't?
A lot of people were upset by the Jesus parallels. Although I haven't read it, so I don't know.
It's it's like a very Christian fantasy novel series, or not novel. It's like they're like light novels.
I believe so. I never read the Narnian novels.
No.
Yeah, there's like
I thought the Christianity hit hard in like the second book.
Oh, like it's their like
thread.
The whole thing. Like they actually talk about like Adam and Eve and.
Oh, really?
Their figure in
not
this.
even subtle. Just
Yeah, a lot of figures take place of like biblical characters and so on. So.
Like that lion is actually Jesus. It's not just a metaphor. He's actually Jesus.
He even gets resurrected at one point. So.
Does he? I haven't read enough of these books to say, but yeah, that's what I was referring to by the strong Christian overtones. Anyway, enough about Narnia and Christianity and Jesus lion.
How is that not a ridiculous sentence?
So
that was the point.
So we'll talk about the White Witch of Rose Hall this time. Not The Witch in the Wardrobe.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. So what do you know about Montego Bay, Jamaica?
I can't even say it.
It's funny because the moment I read Montego Bay, all I had is that stupid song, Down to Kokomo.
Smuggling point?
What?
I think it's a decent smuggling point. That's about all I know.
Yeah.
Not really relevant.
It is very popular tourist destination for duty-free shopping.
Fucking right!
So,
duty-free!
It's the capital of the parish St. James in Jamaica. The fourth largest urban area in the country by population. So, number 4. Hooray! Not even bronze. It's also the second largest Anglophone city in the Caribbean. So, because the French settled down there quite a bit. And
is that the,
That's English speaking.
Oh, okay.
Anglo is in
Anglophone.
Honestly, he kind of... Before I could make a joke, he already filled in the blank.
Yeah.
I don't think it was worth the joke.
What?
I don't think it was worth the joke.
Why not? It's got Anglophone. You could be like, oh man, it's got a weird arcing phone thing with a big... I don't know. Shut up.
So the city's sometimes referred to as the Second City, or Mobay, or Bay.
Just Bay.
Yeah, Bay.
When your country's that hot, you get to be a little lazy.
Oh, that's the way you took it. I was gonna be like, oh man, just got a lot of partners around. Hey, it's my Bay.
Not at all what I was thinking.
I know, and that's why it hurts you so much more.
It doesn't.
So much more.
Whatever keeps you alive.
Keep going, bad.
So Christopher Columbus visited the island in 1494. He named it Golfo de Buen Tiempo, which is fair weather Gulf. The name Montego Bay originated with a Spanish word for manteca, or lard.
Wait, excuse me, lard?
Yeah, it's like a corruption of the word. Allegedly...
There's a lot of fat people there.
Yeah, allegedly... Well, no, it's more because around the period when the port was, being settled, it did do a lot of, business with, lard, leather, and beef. So that's where a lot of exportations was happening. Jamaica was a colony of Spain from 1511 to 1655. So there's, there's a lot of Spanish roots there. So during the epoch of slavery, which was about mid-17th century to about 1834.
Oh, great.
It was a really big sugarcane plantation port. A lot of plantations popped up there. And that kind of brings in where we're at, because a lot of these plantations would build people would build homes on them to reside there. Hi. And, so that's what ended up happening was eventually this land was purchased as a plantation, and they built a nice big rose hall onto it.
Wow.
Let's go through the history of that a little bit.
What great timing of this choice thing.
I know.
It's not like there's any significant events going on surrounding race, and particularly that type of culture and whatnot.
But it takes place in Jamaica.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
All right, so in 1742, Henry Fanning purchased 290 acres of cane land in Montego Bay. He purchased it from a guy named Richard Lawrence for £3,000.
Richard Lawrence. What a modern sounding name. Everybody else has all these
Henry
things.
Fanning, and then Richard Lawrence.
Richard English.
What?
Richard Lawrence?
Well, yeah.
So, their names haven't changed in a while, so I guess it makes a bit of sense.
It's just funny to hear, right? Especially because we listen to all these names throughout all these different things and historical accuracies and stuff, but then all of a sudden we get Richard Lawrence. That's the name you say in a class while waiting for him to say present.
Well, he definitely was present, and he sold the land to Henry Fanning here. Henry...
Dakota Fanning?
Sure.
There could be some roots there. You never know.
Throw it in.
I didn't research Dakota Fanning's. I have no idea.
She's that girl in that thing.
Yeah, and if you're listening, Dakota, please let us know if Henry Fanning was, a relative.
Unless we find out later on that he's not that great a guy, in which case we'd understand if you didn't.
Yeah. Well, Henry married a girl named Rosa Kelly on July 16, 1746. However, the marriage was brief because Henry died soon after, leaving Rosa to inherit the entire land. And all of his estate. So, Rosa went on to marry a local plantation owner known as George Ashe. Ashe then undertook the uncompleted project of Henry Fanning's and built a Jamaican Georgian-style mansion. The mansion has a stone base, plastered upper story, and sits high on a hillside and has a panorama view of the coast. So, it's a very gorgeous view and so on. It cost £30,000 to build and was decorated with mahogany and stone.
Jesus.
Yeah. Then George died in 1752.
I'm starting to see a pattern here.
And Rosa,
she could be unlucky.
And so Rosa married in the May of the following year to Norwood Witter.
Did she upgrade her mansion at the same time?
No.
Okay.
Norwood actually devoured a significant amount of Rosa's fortune, so I'm guessing he probably was a little bit of a con man. But
I like the choice words of devour.
Oh, he
just ate it.
He significantly diminished her all of her estate and so on. He left it very significantly diminished by the time he died on May 20th, 1765. So, Rosa then married a neighboring plantation owner known as John Palmer in May of 1767. John was actually a widower of his own, and his plantation his plantation was joined to hers. It was called Palmyra. Rosa passed away in 1790, and John inherited her land. John Palmer died in 1797, and his estate was left to his sons, John and James Palmer. But the two died childless, and both estates were handed off to a grandnephew known as John Rose Palmer in 1818. Yeah, there's a lot of John Palmers in this.
That seems reasonable. Back then, 40 people were named the same thing.
I'm John Palmer, the 4th Esquire.
He's a lawyer, too. Yeah, it's like the MD for doctors. Yeah. Esquire.
So John set off to Jamaica to basically claim his new estates. The Rose Hall estate had about 650 acres divided amongst the sugarcane, grass, and pasture for over 270 heads of cattle. About 250 enslaved Africans were housed in the Palmyra estate, which furnished about 1,250 acres, and it was rumored there was about 2,000 enslaved Africans on the other plantation for Rose Hall.
I'm hoping Mr. Esquire is gonna free these, these slaves.
You know what this podcast is about, right?
Yeah. Which
don't take away his hope.
But it's so fun.
I'd like at least one episode where I'm not portrayed as racist. It would be nice.
Puns and we'll discuss it.
All right, I'm racist forever.
You heard it from him, folks.
Nobody planted any words in his mouth. Now keep reading. So John Rose Palmer married a woman named Anne Marie Patterson in Lucia, Jamaica, on March 28th, 1820.
Let me correction. John Rose Palmer the 4th Esquire.
Yeah. So John would pass away in November of 1827, leaving Anne Marie to inherit his estate. Now let's talk about their little chapter in this, because this is where the legend of the White Witch begins.
This is where shit gets weird.
It turns out she's actually still Rosalie or whatever her name was, and she's just come back from the dead to continuously keep taking stuff from the family.
And just keep killing husbands, right?
Exactly. Makes sense.
All right, so Annie Palmer, which is what Anne Marie preferred to be called, was born in Haiti to an English mother and an Irish father. Her parents died of yellow fever when she was young, and she was raised by a nanny who taught her witchcraft and voodoo.
What's yellow fever?
So
I actually don't know.
it was like a pandemic that happened in the 18 and 1700s or something, and I didn't look entirely into it, but I do know that it was a very widespread disease that was almost on the same level. It was basically a plague. Like, it was slowly devouring the populations. So
I can relate
to current events.
Out of curiosity, why is it called yellow?
Because of the fact that it seemed to originate in Asia, and it's a whole racist...
Oh, it's a racial thing.
Yeah.
I was expecting, like, because of mass
jaundice
or something like that. Like,
it's because of liver failure, and it causes skin.
yeah, I got that.
Anyways.
No, I was thinking jaundice was involved with it. I didn't think it was the Shut up.
So Haiti fell in...
portrayed as a racist now.
So Haiti fell into turmoil with the enslaved residents insurging against their masters, and this made it really unsafe for any white inhabitants. And it's actually part of the history of Haiti when they were trying to decolonize from the French Republic and from English and all that kind of stuff. It actually became a thing where they would essentially treat white people like how black people were being treated currently and so on. Like, very few rights. There's a lot of segregation. You weren't allowed to be part of certain things, and so on.
For clarity, I was laughing at your wording of it versus the actual event, but
it's a very sad topic.
Yeah. Oh man,
laughed about that before.
Crazy to see white, privilege not being applied in a certain country.
Well, that's not white privilege there now, is it?
That's exactly it. But yeah, so eventually she fled to Jamaica and married John Rose Palmer, the fourth Esquire. And she was 18. She was 18 years old. Unfortunately, Annie was said to have a mean streak, and she was quite controlling and violent. And there was rumors that she was using her dark magic powers to manipulate those around her.
Nice.
This brought on the moniker of the White Witch. John was no peach either, though. He is said to be very, very abusive. It's unclear whether because of the abuse she would take slaves as lovers, or whether it was the abuse was because she was taking slaves as lovers. But she did have affairs with the slaves.
Is every aspect of this going to be race based? This episode,
was slavery is a central theme.
No, I mean because we find out about yellow fever, and then I'm like, oh.
That's literally because...
And then all of a sudden, I'm finding out that White Witch is definitely for a racial terminology.
Unfortunately.
At least it's voodoo witch in this case. It's not typically what you'd associate with white people.
You know what? That's fair.
That
makes me feel so much more better. Yeah.
More better?
More better.
So, Annie ran the house with an iron fist. She was especially ruthless with the slaves. She actually pretty much would every day start off with issuing punishments for the most minute infractions. Even things like, they dropped something or they coughed in her presence and so on. And a lot of these punishments were basically daily executions because there are just so many enslaved.
They're expendable.
Yeah, they can just
be
replaced.
So this woman was a terror.
She also loved to play a game because she was taking lovers from the slaves, but to keep the rumors at bay, she would, and to keep her husband from really finding out, I'm guessing.
Kill him, wouldn't she?
She would kill them.
Yeah.
And it's said that sometimes she would just use black magic to poison them or to have an accident befall them, but yeah, she was executing them.
Keep in mind, poison at that time wasn't terribly well understood, so if you just smeared poison on a thorn and nick somebody, they might think that's black magic.
Also, because Jamaica was such a faraway colony, there wasn't a lot of law.
Yeah, nobody's investigating that stuff.
I'm just more.
Also, a dead black guy. Who cares? I mean, that's still the case.
He said it, not me.
Yeah.
I was more just laughing at the fact that, like, every 5 minutes during the story, a new color is added. Like,
it's the rainbow of racism.
This is, like, probably the pinnacle of racism of all our stories.
Well, it kind of has some retribution in it, and it'll feel a little better at the end.
She has to die hard.
Anyways, so basically...
She explodes.
On a tower.
In a cloud of orange.
And then a rainbow appears.
Now that's just racist against Oompa Loompas.
They just say,
Hey, my best friends are Oompa Loompas.
Oompa Doompas.
Copyright infractions.
Side note, I am terrified of Oompa Loompas.
The Futurama thing is the best.
I just want to say, as a child, 5-year-old me is watching this movie with my father and my mother because they feel that it's a nice little movie that I'll love, you know, back from the 1970s, I believe it is. And meanwhile, there's these tiny orange people basically killing these children and then talking about all the sins that they've committed.
Yep.
There is a reason why people think that fucking Willy Wonka is just a child murderer.
Yeah, like...
There's theories about that everywhere.
In all honesty, I don't really think he's the boss. If I lived with those things, I'd be terrified of them. So guess what? You're gonna make these chocolate bars and you're gonna put gold tickets in it and you're gonna bring the kids in. We're hungry.
We're hungry. We fatten them up and eat them. Oh, the German kid was the best.
Feed them lots of sugar, make them nice and sweet.
The gum girl. Oh, she plumped up like a blueberry.
All right. So, falling into favor with Annie was basically a death sentence. Her days were numbered. And like I said, it was basically when she started to grow bored of these slaves that were, like, when she started to grow bored of her lovers, she would just get rid of them. So, John and Annie's marriage bred a lot of resentment. It was said that John may have actually known a lot about this. Like I said, it's unclear if the abuse that he would give her was because he knew about the affairs or if she took affairs because he was already abusive. But
doesn't it sound like she was also abusive?
She was
they're
abusive
all
to the
terrible.
slaves.
Oh,
She
just to the slaves.
Yeah, she was said to be manipulative and controlling, so maybe he was full of rage because of that. He would realize he'd be manipulated.
Also, women had less rights then. It would be a lot more indirect, the abuse she could do.
Oh, I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one day, John caught her with a lover, and this brought on a very vicious beating. And that's when Annie decided John's fate was sealed. So it's believed that she used her voodoo knowledge to concoct a poison, and then John died and Annie was never suspected. She inherited everything. So both these plantations, like, just to her.
2,500 slaves for her.
Yeah, and a bunch of cattle and grazeland and sugar plantation. Like, she was making a killing. Annie would then remarry twice more, probably to keep the rumors of her relations with the slaves from surfacing. Both husbands would meet similar fates to John. It's actually believed that all 3 husbands are buried under 3 palm trees that are on the property. They were actually in very close proximity to each other.
That's eerie.
Yeah.
But those are very well-fed palm trees.
Yep. Been living off of a couple bodies for a couple hundred years, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Annie eventually took an interest in a slave that...
I thought mushrooms ate bodies, not trees.
No, any sort of nutrient that is underneath a plant,
We'll just siphon it out.
the plant will just, like, yeah.
Ooh.
Like, so as long as the roots are entangled, and as the body degrades too, like, the minerals get into it. There's actually, sorry to go on a little side tangent here, but there's, I think it's a bramble bush or something, is actually considered a carnivorous plant. It might be, I might be thinking of a different bush, but let's assume it's the bramble one, because it has berries that attract sheep.
Oh, they eat it and get entangled.
And yeah, because their wool gets entangled, they eventually die
And then it consumes.
the nutrients. Yeah,
Unbelievably creepy.
I know, right? So that's why they consider that it might be a carnivorous plant.
So, yeah, away from man-eating trees, because I actually have a whole
trees.
case on this. Well, sheep-eating trees. Yeah.
No, it's a bush. Thank you, motherfucker.
Oh my god.
That's what
I feel like I'm more sweary today.
Yeah.
It's the heat.
Yeah.
It makes you racist now.
Fuck. Get back in your cage.
So helping your point.
All right. So, Annie had a slave overseer, which was a slave named Taku. And he was secretly a shaman. Obviously, he would keep that secret from her because if she knew that he had any kind of mystical knowledge, she would get rid of him as well. Well, Annie eventually took an interest in a slave who was engaged to Taku's daughter. So, Taku knew that basically meant that his daughter's fiance was going to meet a very grisly end, so he started to concoct a plan. However, Annie's latest lust basically broke her normal routine. It's thought that he turned her down and rejected her.
Oh.
And he was basically killed the next day.
It's a lose-lose scenario.
Yeah. So you either go through with it or you're insulting your mistress, and
You either die boning or die not boning.
Well, they're slaves too. They're just sex slaves in that instance.
Yeah, exactly.
So, with his daughter's heart broken, Taku became enraged, and he went forward and made up a plan to kill the White Witch. From the accounts that it stated, there's just this big battle, and it resulted in both Amy Palmer and Taku being killed in the altercation. However, some of the slaves claim that there was magic involved, and there was this big and so I just have this giant Harry Potter battle in my head.
Honestly, I was just about to say, you kind of gave me blue balls with the fact that there's apparently there's a battle and two died, and that's it. Some say there was magic, but you know what? We're not even going to go into that.
Well,
let's go on.
That's just it. Is the tales basically just claim that it was a battle of magic? They don't really give a lot of details on it. So there were strict instructions from Taku to his the most trusted people that he had on the island for Annie's burial. She was put into a giant like a crypt, and she was to be sealed in using a ritual to seal her soul inside of it so that she could not resurrect herself using voodoo magic. Yeah.
Do you have any of the rumors written about how the battle went down? I actually want to get details.
No, unfortunately not.
It's probably all insane.
I know, but that's what makes it amazing.
But it would seem that we'll have a few details on how it's believed that Annie died. So.
Oh, okay.
But no, there's just. Apparently, it was just her and Taku in the thing, and I guess they just...
Flipendo!
Expelliarmus! But yeah.
I love... No one's gonna actually figure out where Flipendo comes from. That was the made-up spell they made for the video games.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was your basic attack.
Yeah, so, unfortunately, the burial ritual must have gotten botched, because it's been said that Annie's specter does wander the grounds. So she did manage to rise back from the dead, but not fully. So, Annie's murder seems to coincide with uprisings in Jamaica in 1831, so at this point, a lot of plantations were starting to get burned, and, they would turn against their masters and so on. Rose Hall fell into disrepair during this period, and then in 1960, former Miss USA Michelle Rollins and her husband John Rollins bought and rebuilt the property. It had been empty for a little over a century.
I was going to say, that's quite a big jump.
From there, many people have claimed to witness Palmer riding her horse over the grounds. Sometimes she's seen on a balcony. It's also said that many of the murdered slaves and even spirits of her deceased husbands are still trapped on the land.
This sounds like a great mythological creature type of thing.
Yeah.
Like she's this lore of this woman who keeps all the people she killed trapped within the grounds.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
They can't be free because her spirit is still there holding them.
Yeah, it's sounding that's really intriguing stuff. I actually kind of like the idea where she sort of sits with La Llorona and weird tales like that.
Yeah. So many paranormal shows have done episodes or investigations in Rose Hall. In fact, Ghost Hunter International did a full episode.
Really?
A full hour episode. There's lots of guided tours through this. You can I don't think you can stay there, but I do know you can go into the bedrooms and so on. I actually found a few source material that I was using of actual people in the bedrooms and sitting in the bedrooms and feeling sad or feeling depressed or feeling enraged for no reason and so on. People claim to be touched. Ghost hunter Hans Hosler claims that Annie's spirit possessed medium Eileen Garrett when she was in a trance. So basically, they started asking her questions that Annie would know, and Annie was responding. Johnny Cash actually owned the Cinnamon Great House that was actually very close to both Palmyra and Rose Hall, and he had a fixation on the legend of Annie Palmer and wrote a song called The Ballad The Ballad of Annie Palmer.
The Ballad?
You know it?
All right. I'll just take a small excerpt from it.
Wow!
What a trip of the tongue.
You were right into the reading of it.
Yeah.
Your brain shut off for that one moment of the ballad.
Yeah, the ballad. I was like...
From now on, I'm going to start singing my ballads to everyone.
All right, so the excerpt that I have is one time I was down in Jamaica to a place called Rose Hall Plantation. A lady named Annie Palmer who lived in that great house there. Well, they tell a lot of tales about Annie. They say she had 3 husbands, one at a time, I guess. On the island of Jamaica, quite a long time ago, at the Rose Hall Plantation where the ocean breezes blow, lived a girl named Annie Palmer, the mistress of the place, and the slaves all lived in fear to see a frown on Annie's face. Where's your husband, Annie? Where's number 2 and 3? Are they sleeping beneath the palms beside the Caribbean Sea? At night I hear you riding, I hear your lovers call. I can still feel your presence round the great house at Rose Hall. So now that we've covered the White Witch, now that we've covered the legend of the White Witch, we have to address a really important fact about it.
It's a very racist tale?
It's all bullshit. It didn't actually happen.
Oh, cool.
What?
That's pretty sophisticated.
There's actually a lot of variants of the tale, including that Taku was the lover, and that that he grew really, really tired of her ill treatment, and from his rejection from this, he then killed her. Jeffrey Yates, the assistant archivist of the Jamaican Archives, claimed that the tale started with an entry from Reverend Hope Masterton Waddell's memoir of the strangling of Miss Palmer in 1830. So a lot of the tales do actually have that she died from being strangled instead of... And actually one tale actually ends with her being strangled on Palmyra, not even in Rose Hall. Waddell was also an abolitionist.
Abolitionist?
There we go. I don't know what happened. Holy crap.
All dicks today.
So this account would have definitely strengthened the anti-slavery movements that he was trying to push. If it's funny because Waddell, Reverend Waddell, was actually a huge missionary for I said there wasn't going to be any Christian overtones in this, but he was a missionary for...
Oh, fuck. I've been lied
The one
to.
thing I was going to say is, it sounds like the people who would have seen this would have no way of recording or writing this.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, that this also coincided with an uprising of the slaves, right? So this would just help strengthen their morale to keep the uprisings happening, right?
It's
like, raise against your cruel masters, like... So in 2007, Benjamin Radford did an investigation and concluded that the story is fictional. He concluded that Annie Palmer was actually just modeled from a novel written in 1929 by Herbert G. DeLisser titled The White Witch of Rose Hall. And DeLisser actually claimed that his novel is completely fictional and just based on a small experience he had while staying at Rose Hall. So, more than likely, Annie Palmer took the place of Rosa Palmer, then exaggerated the story to make it more popular and make it fit better models. After all, Rosa Palmer did have 4 husbands and was the mistress of the estate. However, Rosa was actually described as a woman of great virtue and not suspect in any of her husband's deaths. They all seemed to die of natural causes or from, like, an accident that had nothing to do with her. There was an Annie Palmer who did marry a John Rose Palmer in 1820.
John Rose Palmer the fourth Esquire.
However, he died in debt, and Annie had no legal rights to the estate, so she left Rose Hall, and she died in 1846 to just general obscurity. But even with this, people still claim, because there are crypts and tombs on the actual island, and no one knows which one is Annie's, but people do go to visit these and do claim that they're touched by a ghost and that they see Annie Palmer riding the horse. Like I said, Johnny Cash was obsessed with this.
It's funny because earlier on when you mentioned how people were in the bedroom and were feeling things for no explicit reason, I was I didn't really want to get into it, but I was like, oh man, it's probably psychosomatic. They probably just think there's a legend there, and they're
all things with ghosts are psychosomatic.
Exactly. Well, I didn't want to like ruin the tale if that was what it came to.
It's
right?
a ghost. There's
So
no verified cases of ghosts.
Actually, there are verified. I do have a case that's going to come up that where police officers actually have written it into a report that this was a ghost activity.
Police have feelings too.
Yeah, but it has to be when you have several police, because if you're going to put this down on paper, just think about this for a second. You have to hand this to your superiors as legitimate things that are going to go to the court. And if you hand it to them, is your chief of police actually going to go, oh, ghosts, okay. No, they're going to be like, you need to get some fucking psychological evaluation and all this kind of stuff. But
that's not necessarily true for the record, but you'd think it would be, but it's not.
Well, that's how it works. As somebody who went through policing, that is how it works.
That's how it should work.
But that's how you have to hand it off, right?
Yeah,
and you have to write the report.
True.
So you either have to come up with some sort of resolution that's it's a whole thing for another episode, but you have to come up with a resolution.
I love he's the skeptic.
I know. But you can't just discredit everything that has to do with ghosts. There has to be something that has something to do with it.
No, there doesn't.
There has to be. There's too many unexplained accounts of these things. Yeah. I'm not saying that, for instance, this where they're seeing
by that
Annie.
Logic, saying placebo as a sugar pill occasionally helps people without them knowing, that means there's a power in sugar.
Well, that's actually the power of your mind, because your mind...
What do you think I'm saying here?
I understand that, but at the same time, there has to be some sort of, explanation for spiritual activities and so on. And they've even tried putting forward that it might be psychological in, mold, because most haunted places are very old and they have mold and stuff like that, and scientists have tried putting forward that that's actually an explanation, is that the mold makes you hallucinate.
Yeah, but that would just make it a hallucination. The ghost aspect is simply a cultural, flavor of that.
But culture, all cultures talk about spirits.
That's because everyone hallucinates. Or at least is capable of it. Having a common interpretation doesn't make it true.
This is the aliens all over again. I love sitting on the sidelines Because I feel like I'm in the middle. Like
I'm clearly on one side.
I could go either way with a lot of those types of things. Like a lot of my own personality for me, it's not a matter of belief. I have an overactive imagination to some extent. I will believe it regardless. But at the same time, I also just really like concepts for stories. So
I look at things with like, because I did some investigations and I did like read these things or whatever, like read through them, investigate them. That's kind of why I started this whole thing, was like, because sometimes there's just stuff you can't explain. And in doing that, you also have to debunk some of these. So like, for instance, oh, there's a cold spot here. Yeah, there's a fucking vent right here. Like, or the electromagnetic thing. Like a lot of people go, oh, there's a high electromagnetic thing, and you see that on ghost hunter shows all the time. There's a lot. The EMF readers going off the charts. You're right by an electrical box. And they try to say like, oh, we debunked it and all this good stuff, but they don't. They're taking it to make ratings and so on. But you do go into a lot of places and people will be like, there's this and there's that. But then there's also things that I'm like, I can't possibly explain this.
Why the EMF meter?
So apparently a lot of ghosts or whatever, according to how it's supposed to work, is that they need energy to be able to manifest. And so electromagnetic is that they're drawing all the electric energy into one spot, which then causes a spike in the EMF. But that doesn't always necessarily account for that, because some TVs give off a lot of electromagnetic. Like, you can have a cell phone in your pocket and has a lot of EMF in it. Like,
I also think the problem there is ghosts are supposed to be unexplained, and yet if there's an explanation, they're not unexplained.
Yeah. And it kind of goes with, like, so I do listen to Scared to Death, and Dan and Lindsay say it all the time. If even one story is true, that means there has to be true stories. And there's a lot of things that you get kind of open to as time goes on. And it doesn't, like I said last week with the aliens, you can't just have, like...
You just described your own bias. You know that, right?
I understand that, but at the same time...
Okay.
There's a bias in anything. You're biased because you don't believe in it, because you don't... Again, this goes back... Again,
I'm not opposed to the concept. I'm just saying, as of yet, no.
There's no scientific...
There you go.
There's no entirely scientific proof of a ghost, but there's also no proof that they don't exist.
You can't prove a negative. That's irrelevant. Logic says no.
But this is what I mean, is there are some aspects of it that happen, and even scientists go, we don't know.
Yeah, that's why scientists exist. If we do everything, we wouldn't need science. Saying we don't know something doesn't mean you can just fill in the gaps with whatever the fuck you want.
But what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to fill in a gap with whatever I want. I'm just saying that this kind of stuff happens. And yeah, I do believe that probably sitting in those rooms, like, and being like, oh, like, this, like, because they obviously tell you, like, oh, this is, like, John Palmer, Forbes Esquire's former room. You're going to be in there, and you heard the tale that, like, he was abusive and angry all the time. Of course, you're going to start to feel angry.
Yeah.
But same thing with Annie Palmer. There's a giant portrait of her in the, like, parlor or whatever, and people say that when they look at it, they start to feel sad or angry.
Yeah, do they have any cultural context for that?
But that's just it, is they've been told all these stories by the people who own it. So it has to be psychosomatic to a point, or like when they get to these tombs, they then feel the same emotions that, oh, Annie felt, like, from having to be dead. But as we just saw, she didn't actually exist on the land. She wasn't this person. She left and died in obscurity. She wasn't killed by this slave. So she's not buried on the land. So if they are feeling touches, and these are legitimate touches, it has to be whoever's buried in there. But who's to say that they're not just...
No, it doesn't. It could entirely be...
As I said, if these are legitimate touches, then it'd have to be whoever's buried there. But again, you can't prove that that touch was actually there, or just them being like, oh, I felt something.
It's
like,
still a false association. It could be something else regional.
Could be a bug on you as well. Like,
yeah,
he's in favor of what you're saying. Calm down.
This
This
so
isn't the same argument that was happening before. Calm down, Token. Also, I have to say, very good roundabout how you brought everything back. I have to commend you for that. You were very in the moment of where we needed to get back to. And you did it just before I was about to. So.
I was going to end on a Paul Mooney ghost quote.
But yeah, so more than likely a lot of this is psychosomatic, but it is an old building. So a lot of slaves died on this land. If there is such thing as spirits, maybe that's what they're feeling. Maybe that's where these sightings are coming from. But I don't think that there's actually a woman out there riding a white horse, like a woman spirit. If there is a woman riding a horse out there, it's got to be like one of the local people. Like, come on.
Or, you know, a Doulahan just took a really long ride to Jamaica.
Yeah. But yeah, so
that's a reach. I like it though.
I
mean, I guess ghosts don't need to swim.
Really?
They can just ride across the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Long, boring ass trip.
Yeah.
There's an anime actually where
there's an anime on everything.
Let me finish for fuck's sake. Where one of the main characters is a Doulahan, and she's living in Japan.
Chilling.
No,
it's Japan, so it could be.
Her head went missing, and everything suspected that it was somewhere in Japan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so she's like working with a scientist who wants to like study a Doulahan because, well, fucking a Doulahan exists. It's a being without a fucking head.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But yeah. So, like I said, it's still a very popular tourist attraction, and that legend still gets spread a lot. In fact, a lot of the videos that I was watching, in fact, one of the videos that inspired me to do this one, basically stated that whole legend as fact. And I was like, this kind of reminisces of like, there's actually a whole case from a slave murder house in Louisiana that I'm going to want to do. And it kind of resonated of that. And then when they started getting into the ghost tale of it, I was like, that's just seems too coincidental. Like, everything seems to just match up perfectly. So then when I started reading further into this, I was like, that seems legitimate, that there actually isn't any link to this.
I actually kind of liked how you sort of brought it up too, because you're telling the story and then you're like, and then they say that her spirit haunts the thing, and I'm like, oh. Like when
it's straight face though.
I know, but it was still kind of like it was just funny because it was just like one of those things where your brain clicks and like, wait, what? Like, it was one thing when you looked back at like
the history,
them stating that they might have been using magic. Like, that's just them over exaggerating what could have been what was actually happening. But then the spirit is still wandering, keeping the souls there
because of a botched ritual. Like, and then like that whole premise of the spirit just keeping all of those other spirits there because of a botched ritual. Maybe that's why Taku knew that it was going to end up happening. He knew this ritual had to happen. It would just lead into a whole thing like that. But it's a nice piece of folklore, and it does definitely make this attraction a lot more.
Which is what I was saying earlier. Like, as folklore, like I love the idea of it. Like, and I guess subconsciously, I kind of figured out it was not real when I said that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's the whole Rose Hall, the whole White Witch. Yeah, big racist tale.
Big racist, not real tale.
Yeah. And then a full debate.
And
cool story, bro.
Yeah. You were so frustrated. See, this is why I was smiling with the big shit-eating grin during the aliens bit. I just knew the minute you said it that, like, he can't fucking deal with that type of shit. So
it's like stupid.
So think about it this way, though. Do you believe in an afterlife?
No.
See, that's the point. Is he believes it's oblivion, and that's it. Whereas
Right.
I'm not quite certain on that aspect. I believe there has to be something.
Neither am I, but I'm not counting on it.
Yeah,
It'd be a pleasant surprise.
I think people, if anything, the reason why we have tales like that, whether true or not, the reason we have tales like that is we want there to be an afterlife because we don't want our consciousness to
we all have a fear of death.
Like,
well, it's actually funny because like the ancient Egyptians actually believed that oblivion was the most terrifying thing in the world to them. If you actually look into their ancient, like into their ancient like texts and so on, and like how their religion worked, it was their heart got weighed on the scale, and if it was heavier than the feather of truth, it would fall to the ground and be eaten by something called the gobbler. And when it was eaten, you ceased to exist, and that was terrifying to them.
Like stolid type.
Yeah, their actual version of like if your heart was lighter was that you got to move on to a mirror image of your current life with all of your dead relatives and all existing around you, and that was their. And that's not a bad like afterlife to have a mirror image of what you had already. But then to cease to exist is terrifying, and I think that's an aspect that a lot of people hold on to is that if there's nothing after this, you cease to exist, so what's the whole point of your life?
Yeah, because I think everybody, I think, feels that way. Like, atheists even feel like that, but they want to keep as much of a realism as possible, and that's why they take to their stance as much as they do.
Yeah, it's same thing with, like, we'll eventually cover the story of, like, the weight of a soul.
I feel like I could have said something there.
Oh, you can.
It's just, I'd rather focus my energies on things that make a difference. Worrying about shit that I have no knowledge of is pointless.
Well, it's not always that case. Like, in religions, a lot of religions, that is the case. They really force that on you.
Yeah.
It's just in general, like, it's something that for a lot of people in general, like, I'm apatheist. And for many people who've never heard the term, it's an agnostic, it's a form of agnosticism that basically says, I don't give a shit what the religion is, I don't really care. And it's
so me.
Yeah, and the idea is that the person in question, even if they're faced with God, will probably not change their viewpoints.
No, why would you?
Yeah, exactly. And so
other than cool, you exist.
Exactly. And so, but regardless of that factor, I do, in the back of my mind, occasionally think about how death will lead to a conscious oblivion of my consciousness.
Are we like post content here?
Yeah, we can actually wrap it up, and then we'll have a full discussion for like the bonus material.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Not everyone's interested in the debate on religion because that's gonna get ugly.
So yeah, rate, review. I'll wrap this up.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. We got really intrigued. I actually lost track myself, or I would have ended it a while back anyway. So, rate, review, stars,
drawings of our characters,
tangible ghost people, La Llorona. I mentioned her at one point. It's not relevant, but it's there.
We will definitely have to make an episode of that.
Make sure that Ben gets his ballads, or no, ballads. That's what he said. Ballads.
Ballads.
And yeah, everyone, have a good night.